Okay, this one is for all my little kitties out there. Meow. I saw this trend on TikTok and I thought we could pounce in. Paws up. Okay, put a finger, or I guess a toe, but like put a finger down if you're blind when you're born. Put a finger down if you can see in the dark. Put a finger down if you're tense when you sense there's a storm in the air. Put a finger down if you know how to go to the heaviside layer. Okay, put a finger down if you have a name that sounds like a hobbit mixed with a children's toy. Mungo Jerry, Rumple Teaser, put your fingers down. Put a finger down if you're known for doing magic tricks. Put a finger down if you are obsessed with the moon. Where are my moon kitties? And put a finger down if you spend all year waiting for the ball. If you don't have any toes left on your little paw, then girl, you're a Jellicle Cat. And you better be at the ball tonight because it's the big one. Come ready to surf. Stay tuned after the theme song for my review of Cats, the Jellicle Ball. Welcome back, Black Stars. My name is Anastasia X, and I love art almost as much as I love Black people. So I started this YouTube channel, Black Star Reviews, to shine a light on the work of Black creatives in New York City and beyond. This is our 18th episode, and today we are reviewing Cats, the Jellicle Ball, which is equal parts a revival and very much its own thing at PAC NYC, all the way down at the bottom of Manhattan. The show is co-directed by Zhailon Levingston and Rauch, and you have until August 11th to see it for yourself, which, let me be so clear, you should absolutely, positively make it happen. Before we go any further, I don't want to burden y'all with cat puns throughout the episode. I just am going to get them off my chest right now so we could get them out the way. Here we go. How you feeling today? Oh, I got caught in that rain this morning and it was clawful. Yeah, let me get 3 tacos and a large Mountain Dew. It was good. My homegirl said she went to the T-Pain concert and it was music to her ears. You're kidding me if you think I was born yesterday. I mean, anything is possible. But why are you so hysterical? Are you for real? No, it's perfect. Until you do right by me, I'm gonna put it all on pause. I got all these puns from Purina Cat Chow, and I only mention them here to cite my sources. This is not an endorsement of their product. Now, I have to give it up to this show for giving credit where it's due, namely acknowledging each of the founding mothers in name and visage while the song Moments of Happiness was performed. Crystal LaBeija, Pepper LaBeija, Avis Pendavis, Dorian Corey, Paris Dupree, Duchess Lawang, and Angie Extravaganza. So deep honor to all of the iconic and legendary founding mothers of Ballroom, and shout out to the fathers too. But for today's dedication, I want to take it back even further, because whether they knew it or not, the balls that these mothers and fathers threw actually followed in the footsteps of someone much earlier, William Dorsey Swann. Now, there are no photos of Mr. Swann because of the time period, but he is well documented in newspapers and legal proceedings. William Dorsey Swann was born into slavery in Maryland, and when he was about 5 years old, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, rendering him and any Black person who heard the news finally free. When he was about 20, he was living in Washington, D.C., and hosted a series of secret cakewalk events at a venue he called the House of Swann. Participants would dress up in their finest garments, strut their most enchanting walk, and the winner would take the cake. Most of the dancers in Swann's events were men, and Swann, who also participated, referred to himself as the Queen of Drag, making it likely that he was the first person to coin the term. What I find interesting about Mr. Swann is that he could have easily been lost to history if it wasn't for the press he was getting for all of the trouble he was causing. Newspapers would write about how his parties were broken up and arrests were made, and at one point he was sentenced to 300 days in jail. During that time, he requested a pardon from then President Grover Cleveland. And even though the pardon wasn't granted, his popularity, persistence, and the ensuing paper trail has earned him a Wikipedia page, a mini PBS special hosted by Peppermint, and a forthcoming biography by Channing Gerard Joseph entitled House of Swann, where slaves became queens. So we dedicate today's episode to William Dorsey Swann, who, without ever having his photo taken, created the blueprint for ballroom culture and fought for full selfhood as a queer Black man at a time when Black people were generally seen as 3/5 of a person. So thank you, Queen Swann. We love you. First, let me say that there is more context than will fit into this episode. And most of my work this time around is to whittle it down because this show is such a rich experience. The first time I saw the promo for the show, I didn't know what the poster was trying to tell me. We've got Jody Mugler in a brocade unitard and matching bolero jacket mid-leap with the words "Cats, the Jellicle Ball" over the front. Jody has no ears, no tail, no fur. So it's like, this is not a regular version of Cats, but I also don't know what it is. If it had been a regular version of Cats, I may not have wanted to go. I saw a community theater production of Cats when I lived in Utah as a high school student. And what I remember most is people of varying shapes and sizes, dressed as cats and crawling through the aisles in the dark. This was the day that my mom learned that her fear of felines extended to feline impersonators as well. She screamed in the theater when one of the little cat people got close to her. That's my first memory of Cats. Now, the short version of context that you need for this show is just 3 things. The first is that Cats, the original Broadway musical by Andrew Lloyd Weber, debuted in 1981. And it is a show about cats. Just cats. The show is known for its dancing and for its music. And the music is like a mix of 80s era pop and opera. And the dancing is like Cirque du Soleil meets aerobics video. There's slithering, there's sliding, there's prancing, there's gyrating. And because the dancers are in full body leotards and wearing face paint, it's both somehow sensual and animalistic. Is it a family show? It really depends on what kinds of things you want to see your child imitating after the show lets out. And if you're curious and you've never seen it, there are so many clips of Broadway Cats on YouTube. Now, while original Cats leaves me feeling mostly unsettled, it ran for 21 years in London and for 15 years in the United States. And it grossed $3 billion by the time it was all said and done. So I realized that I may be the outlier, I may be the hater, and I'm okay with that. I think Mr. Weber did his thing on School of Rock, but Cats wasn't for me. Second piece of context. Ballroom is a culture, a movement, a style of dance, an activity, a place, a community, and a feeling, all at the same time. Most people's understanding of ballroom can be credited to the documentary Paris is Burning and to Madonna's music video for the song Vogue. But those with more experience may have also seen Pose, Legendary, the documentary Kiki, or RuPaul's Drag Race. But it should be noted that while ballroom contains elements of drag, drag is not ballroom. Ballroom is a form of expression and a space of love for queer people and families, which are called houses in the ballroom system. The actual ballroom event is a competition where participants dance, walk, or pose against other contenders within a specific category in hopes of taking home a trophy, a grand prize. And it's all set to music with very, very good beats. The pioneers of ballroom were Black and brown trans women and femmes, and over time, gay men, known in ballroom as butch queens, were also able to participate. Now, not all queer people participate in ballroom, and not all people who participate in ballroom are queer or trans. It's not like a secret gay meeting. Most balls are open admission if you know where to look and if you know who to ask. Ballroom and voguing are very much alive and well. Ballroom did not start with Madonna. Ballroom was not revived by Beyonce. Ballroom started in Harlem and it swung downtown before spreading out to everywhere. And at the time that you're watching this episode, it's likely that there is a ball happening somewhere in the world right now. I should also note, you do not have to have a deep understanding of ballroom to enjoy this show, but I ask that you please show some respect for the history, the symbolism, and the robust physicality required to slay. Number 3, the show is co-directed by Bill Rauch and Zhailon Livingston, and I want to talk about Zhailon for a second. In 2021, he made history as the youngest Black director in Broadway for the show Chicken and Biscuits. He was also the resident director for Tina, the Broadway musical about the one and only Tina Turner. And I mention him because the creative vision necessary to pull off something like this singular spectacle, I'm just so happy that he has a long career ahead of him. It should also be said, I am neither a member of the Cats Hive or the Ballroom community. I am here to enter this show into the Black Star Review's archive because as far as I'm concerned, queer Black art is Black art. So as I said earlier, Lloyd Webber's original Cats is not plot-driven. There is an oft-repeated moment in Cats lore. Andrew Lloyd Weber has just previewed the whole show for this theater director named Harold Prince, and Harold is trying to find the symbolism. He asks Andrew, so is it about, politics? Is Victoria the cat supposed to be, Queen Victoria? And Andrew turns to him, a little exasperated, and he's like, Cal, it's just about cats. And this is because the source material is also just about cats. T.S. Eliot, the great American poet, used to write these little poems about cats for his godchildren. And at one point, the poems were collected up and published under Eliot's pen name, Old Possum. And it was called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. Andrew Lloyd Webber took the poems in virtually the same order that they appear in the book, and with no changes to the original text, and he set them to music. And that is how we have Cats, which is just about cats. But notably, this adaptation is not just about cats, and it feels like it offers a tad bit more. For starters, the show is on a fashion show style runway, and there's cabaret, runway, orchestra, and balcony seating. And I'm going to try to explain to you what happens in this show, but keep in mind that the source material doesn't have too much of a narrative arc, so they are working with what they've got. And all the cats have very nonsensical names if you're not familiar with the original Cats. So when the show Cats the Jellicle Ball begins, it is the night of the Jellicle Cats annual ball, and they are all stoked. They're competing in the ball for this judge, Old Deuteronomy, who is this really old cat, and possibly all of their father, trying to win trophies for their houses, and also to win the grand prize, which is to go to the Heaviside Layer up in the sky and get reborn fresh and good as new. We see the cats competing through dance across a number of real ballroom categories: schoolboy realness, thug, old way, new way, tag team, virgin vogue, runway, hands, and more. Everybody's performance is cute, but it's a chop because Old Deuteronomy isn't sold. In true ballroom fashion, everybody looks fab, but it turns out that McCavity, the mystery cat, borrowed a few items from the boutique in order to pull off the McCavity children's looks. So the cops show up to retrieve the stolen merchandise, and Old Deuteronomy takes the rap on McCavity's behalf. They are able to get Old Deuteronomy back with the help of Mr. Mistopheles, the conjuring cat. He uses his magical abilities. And ultimately, Old Deuteronomy selects Grisabella, an older queen who's seen better days and lost her way, and she ascends to the Heaviside Layer, only to come back in full glam, dustied no more. At the finale, all the cats work the runway, and you're left with so much adrenaline and so much unbridled joy that they have to cut the music just to get you to leave the theater. Maybe it's just me. I didn't want to go. So I have one key thought, that this show was so carefully done. You can see the intention and the specificity that the creative team put in. And I think about some of the words that we tend to throw around in the modern day. Spectacular, awesome, marvelous. We don't mean anything when we say it. But all of those words apply here in a literal way. This show is a spectacle. It is awe-inducing. It is a marvel. It is not like anything I have seen before. It feels like both sheer genius and a no-brainer. Jellicle Cats come out. Jellicles come to the ball. Who knew that we were talking about a ball the whole time? The show has an 80s, 90s vibe to it, which is around the same time that the old way of voguing began to combine to the new way. And the costumes for cats have always been over the top. But what's more over the top than an entire house dressed in coordinated Cruella de Vil style polka dots? Like, it just makes sense. I have some more examples of intentionality in the show. So first, we have Grizabella, founding mother of the House of Glamour. House of Glamour, not a real house. They made it up, but it makes sense because Grizabella the Glamour Cat, of course she would have had a house. Of course it would have been called the House of Glamour. The moon is represented by the sparkliest disco ball I have ever seen, at the club or anywhere. The costumes, not cat-like, but still extremely whimsical. So we've got no ears, but we've got real people wearing real shoes, voguing in the shoes that they would wear to vogue, and wearing clothes that I could easily see on somebody that I would pass in Harlem. So there is like a certain element of realness to the show, even though it's supposed to be fantastical. They pay homage to the femme queens, the elders. So many of them are gone, no longer with us. So that respect is nice to see. Skimbleshanks, who is a railway cat, works for the MTA. Duh! There's historic photos as you come in that are highlighting ballroom icons, legends, LGBTQ activists, and trailblazers. Mr. Mistopheles, the conjuring cat, is using his magic to snatch wigs. Like, that's so on brand. And they gifted cabaret tickets to certain houses. And the second night that I came, some house members were sitting in as judges. It was like they really went and got people from ballroom to choreograph, perform, MC, and consult. And it felt very of ballroom and not like about ballroom. So there are films like Paris is Burning and Kiki, and those works have expanded public knowledge of the ballroom scene and of the obstacles that queer people, specifically queer people of color, are faced with on a regular basis. It also helped people gain exposure. So take Willie Ninja, the grandfather of voguing. He was both smart and lucky enough to be able to parlay his feature into choreography and modeling work. He also went around the world to teach voguing. So these projects may have changed the mindsets of the audience, but other than Willie Ninja, these works didn't really change the lives of the performers who were featured in these films. Of the founding house mothers, only one is still living. Most died young. Angie Extravaganza was 28 years old when she died. Octavia St. Laurent, who was not a mother, but who was featured prominently in Paris is Burning, died of cancer because she couldn't afford treatment. Paris Dupree was initially buried in an unmarked grave in Potter's Field. Each of these women helped aim a spotlight that never lent them its full light. Time and time again, when ballroom was center stage, these pioneers were pushed aside to wait in the wings. Reasonably so, some community members were embittered by the act of mainstream culture swooping in, showcasing ballroom culture, and then not coming back, not giving back, just leaving them in some cases to suffer. So in my research for this episode, I came across a very lengthy oral history, and near the end, there was a quote by Twiggy Pucci Garçon that says, "The vision and goal would be for ballroom to continue to be self-sustaining." Now, I won't name names in this moment, but there are other shows and projects where ballroom community members are brought on as consultants to give notes on the script or the staging or the story, or sometimes those consultants are just brought in to check a box so that the team can say, oh yeah, we talked to the community. So they'll bring someone in to teach a mainstream actor how to vogue, how to carry themselves, the patterns of speaking, rather than just hiring the consultant to be themselves and teaching that person how to act. And over time, that becomes more and more exploitative. So the consultants are very much at the whim of these projects. In order for ballroom to be self-sustaining, consulting credits are not going to cut it. The performers should be compensated for their time, their energy, and the creativity that they pour into their craft. And so I was pleased to see that there were a number of real people from the ballroom scene that were compensated and credited for their work on this project. So we have Junior LaBeija of the House of LaBeija playing Gus the Theater Cat. And Gus the Theater Cat is a cat who sat outside the theater and also used to be an actor himself. And he tells this whole story about his moment in the sun. And this is really genius because Junior LaBeija is a founding member of the very first house, the House of LaBeija, and he's seen prominently emceeing in Paris is Burning, right? So he is Gus the Theater Cat in more than one way. We've got Queen Jean on costumes, and like I said, I love the costumes because they just felt so authentic. They felt like I was on a sidewalk in Harlem. This is the kind of stuff I see every day. But Queen Jean is a trans woman, and she is responsible for the Black Trans Liberation Project. So she is active in the community and also an amazing costume designer. So it's a win-win, it's a no-brainer. The show was choreographed by icon Arturo Miyake Mugler and legendary Omari Nina Orichi. So we've got ballroom people helping ballroom people to choreograph their work. It's not anybody from the outside who needs to be brought up to speed, who needs to be taught how to do it. Grizabella is played by Temperance Chastity Moore, who's a femme queen and queen mother of the House of Maison Margiela. And she represents all of the founding house mothers in her character of Grizabella. There's a lot of Kiki houses mentioned in the bios too, and Kiki houses are separate from mainstream houses. You can be a member of both. So it's nice to see that the people who are performing in this show are not only doing it on stage, but they're doing it in their real lives. They are part of the sustainable ballroom culture, not the exploitative, spectacleized ballroom culture. And just a moment on the femme queens and the founding mothers. Like I said, a lot of them are no longer with us anymore, and a lot of them died very young for various reasons, but a lot of it had to do with lack of resources. And you wonder, if these women were still here with us, how would they be regarded by the community? Would they be seen as, girl, go sit down somewhere with all that? Or would they be revered as elders? In many cases, I think they would be revered. But Grizabella, she's walking around with a Louis duffel and holes in her jeans, but also this like fabulous fur jacket that you know has seen better days. And there are many trans women, femme queens, who have been left behind, who have been forgotten, who live on the outskirts of society. And so to see this person be welcomed into the community, to be celebrated, even if she's not at her highest, even if she's not at her youngest and her juiciest, it feels like a reminder and a message to all of us that in any community, any subculture, elders bring enormous value, and we gain more from respecting them than we do from ostracizing them. And if we are still in our young, juicy phase, then it is our responsibility to make sure that the former young and juicies still are getting what they need, right? That they're not walking around with unkempt wigs, looking crazy, that we are keeping community with them, letting them know that we love them and they're still very much a part of us, a part of the movement. My review. So as badly as I want to award this show 10s across the board, it comes in at 4 stars. The mics are on, the cast is really dancing, really singing, and I know they're going all out because I can hear it. The lyrics are jumbled, the enunciation just isn't there. And in musical theater, especially a sung-through musical where the major plot points are delivered through song, the audience has to be able to know what you're saying. And I saw the show twice just to be sure it wasn't me or an off night or I was sitting in the wrong place. One time I sat on the runway, one time I sat in the center orchestra about 3 rows behind Andre DeShields in a glorious wig, which is definitely hair goals. Nakia Mathis, please. If you're finished with that wig, I would love to wear it. Now, there are whispers that this show might be headed to Broadway, and I really hope it does because I think more people should see it. But they have got to get a hold of each syllable before that transition happens. The second critique is on environment. And I only mention this because it was intended to be a part of the experience. As you come in, like I said, there are posters with images of ballroom icons and international LGBTQ activists and some information about them. And at the bottom of some of these posters, where there could just be, a citation or just a named source, there is a link. Not a bit.ly, but like a long, jumbly link, just like copy pasted right there. Now, I have an academic background, so I'm more familiar with like citation styles, APA, MLA, Turabian. All you got to do is choose one. There's even apps that will cite things for you. You give them the URL, they will spit out a citation. Or if citations are not your style, just use a QR. But it's like, are these links here to show the audience that you did the research, or to help them learn more for themselves, or just to look ugly? Because who's going to stand there and write down this long link? I love the idea of this, and we've seen pre and post show reading before, like in Dominique Morisseau's Sunset Baby, where she had the long, basically like a wall of information about the Black Panthers and the Black Liberation Movement. But we have got to polish it. These long, jumbly links look crazy. So to me, these are quick fixes, and those 4 stars are truly well earned. The sense of joy, the uplift, the intentionality, and the inclusion of the ballroom community in an authentic way had me on a high, had me high stepping out of the theater. And I do think people should go see this show. I don't think that the enunciation is a reason to stay home. I don't think that the jumbly links is a reason to not support this amazing, amazing production. Now, who to bring? I will tell you who was there when I went to go see the show, because I found it fascinating. And for context, first time I saw the show was the Sunday of Pride. So Pride weekend in New York City, like the last day, that's when I went to go see Cats, which was the perfect day, of course. Now, there were 4 main groups of people in the audience who had all converged to see the show that evening. We have Cat's Hive, right? The woman next to me was definitely Cat's Hive, because when Mr. Mistopheles came out, she stood up and put her hands in the air as if she was in church. Like she was going to glory through the magic of Mr. Mistopheles. You also have theater people. These are people who go see every show about everything. They know the legacy of Cats. They're showing up. They probably don't know that much about ballroom, but they're happy to be there. Third group is what I'll call the Pride community. And I'm calling it the Pride community because I'm not going to guess at people's sexualities or also how they identify. But it was a lot of people wearing rainbows, right? Whether they're allies or whether they are in the life, if you want to call it that. The Pride community was definitely in the building. And then you have people of color. This was not a large group, but it seemed like there were a number of people of color who were not wearing hat ears, who did not come with playbills to get signed, who did not come in wearing rainbows. They just came in ready to see a show. So I think if you know someone who falls into any of those categories, they would all like it. I also think that people who don't fall into those categories should see it, should experience it. I think that people who are very closed-minded about queer identity and who think that tolerance is the way to go probably would not enjoy this show. But at the same time, I think they should see it, because once you see the brilliance and the creativity, I just don't understand how you could still feel some type of way about that. So I would take anybody to see this show. And honestly, I would take a child to see this version of Cats before I took a child to see the 80s version with the leotards, because something about them rubbing on each other is just, it's with the fur, it's like a little too much. Where to go after the show? Like I said, I went the Sunday of Pride weekend, so by the time the show let out, I was all partied out. I got rained on at Harlem Pride, so I had had enough, and I just went home. And honestly, when I think about it, the show was so invigorating and so energizing. I was too turned up to go anywhere. So this is not the kind of show where you just go get a drink after, have a quiet chat, go have some dinner. After this show, you're gonna wanna go to the club. You're gonna wanna hear beats. You're gonna wanna see disco balls, flashing lights. So if you don't know where to go to get that, just go ahead and take your little behind home. Thank you all for tuning into another episode of Black Star Reviews. We have got another one in the archive. We are up to 18. I'll be back in a few weeks because a very special Leo lady in my life is turning the big 6-0. She would not want me to tell you any more than that. She's an extremely private person, and also she was 36 for like 15 years straight. So happy birthday, Gigi. You know who you are. Be sure to subscribe so that you are notified of the next episode. And in the meantime, I'm sending y'all so much black love and star love. Stay shining, y'all.